Events that push game developers to their limits, where creativity meets chaos for one thing: total victory. And this is how my first ever Game Jam went. Now, what is a Game Jam? Game Jams are short time limited events where individuals or teams create a game from scratch around a specific theme, restriction, or prompt. Now the Game Jam I joined was the 47th Jam Jam. In this jam, contestants were given just under 60 hours to design and create a game completely from scratch, all centered around the theme, cheap copy. But there was a twist. One of the rules stated that your game must not only follow the theme, but also include something called the special object. And that object was an egg. To ensure every game in this jam had to connect to the theme cheap copy and somehow also feature an egg. So I started out by brainstorming different ideas for the game. Eventually, I came up with the idea of a heist game. The concept was simple. The player would pick a target, create a cheap copy of it, and then swap the copy for the original. It sounded straightforward enough, but there was one problem. Scope creep. At first, it was just one target, one simple swap. Easy, right? But then I thought, what if there were multiple targets? What if the player could move around and craft his own lunch? What if there were guards on those targets? Suddenly, my tiny heist game started growing into an entire stealth simulation. And that is how I fell into the most dangerous trap of game development: scope creep. Before I even started working on the actual game, I was already overwhelmed by the almost limitless possibilities. So, I took a break. I decided to keep it extremely simple. Instead of a big heist game, I scaled it down to a match the target game using trading cards. So I opened up Unity and built a quick prototype with just two scripts. One for the target card and one for the cheap copy. Here's how it worked. The player is given a target card with 4 variables: a main image, a background image, an element type, and a level. And all the player had to do was match their cheap copy to the target card, which, let's be honest, it's not nearly as cool as pulling off a full-on heist. But hey, it's better than nothing. Next, I jumped into Aseprite to make some quick game art. And I designed 4 different trading cards, each with 4 different parts I could use to mix and match. And my favorite card was this freaky air frog. So after I finished all the art, I imported it all into Unity and wrote another script. This script could generate a random card using all the different sprites I made. So now, I had 3 different types of card logic in the game. First, the cheap copy card, which starts out completely blank. Second, the randomly generated card. The player uses parts from this card to assemble their copy. And finally, the target card, the one the player is trying to match as closely as possible. And with that, I had a very basic working game. But of course, during the development process, there were a few times I was sick of staring at code and working on the art. So whenever that happened, I'd switch things up and load up FL Studio to work on the background music for the game. It was a nice way to reset my brain while still making progress. And this is what I came up with. It's a super simple beat that just loops over and over again the entirety of the game. And I'm pretty sure I was listening to the Space Jam soundtrack when I was making it. From there, I kept going with the development of the game, adding buttons, sound effects, and some basic animations, which made the game feel more alive and less stiff. And finally, I submitted the game to the jam, and waited for the results. And after a few days of voting, the results of the game jam were posted. And out of 99 entries, my game placed 20th. Which is so much better than I expected. And that was basically how my first ever game jam went.